Did your running back underperform for you in week one? Well, let's get those lineups set for week two. Let's talk some running backs. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there. Week one is over. Week two is here. We got to start setting some lineups and getting ready for week two. No matter the outcome of week one, got to pay attention to week two. Plenty of season left to go. Similar to my other positional videos this week, I'm switching up the format a little bit. You know, last week I did 3 starts and 3 sits. Got 4 out of the 6 correct. Not bad, but I want to switch it up a little bit this week. But let me know down in the comment section if this is something you guys like. Instead of just talking about 6 players, I'm going to give you 40 to 50 names, a quick start-sit designation, and a quick reason why. That way I can get you more information quicker, and then you can always ask questions down in the comment section that I can try to get to by the end of the week. It's a busy week. Tons of questions and comments flood through here, but I do my best to get to as many as possible. If I can't get to them, make sure you guys are helping each other out. Let's grow the community, get people involved, help each other out. Before I get into this list, real quick, after this video, head over to the RotoBaller channel. Had a very successful week 1 live show right there before kickoff. Doing the same thing again this week. You don't want to miss it. But for now, let's get into a long list of running backs. All right, let's get into this list. Let's start off right off the bat with Todd Gurley, and these are in no specific order. These are not my rankings for the week. Todd Gurley being number 1 here on the list, though. If you ever contemplate sitting Todd Gurley, I don't know if fantasy football is for you. He is a must-start every single week. David Johnson is next on the list, and I really contemplating putting him as a sit this week. I have him as a start right now, but you guys need to make sure you temper expectations. They're going to be going up against the Los Angeles Rams and one of the best defenses in football, and Arizona's offense did not exactly look productive, to say the least. If you start David Johnson, which you more than likely have to, don't be expecting a big day. Next on the list is Ezekiel Elliott, going to be playing at home against the Giants. And I already had people wanting to jump off the Zeke bandwagon after week 1. Don't do it, people. He still had a decent game. I expect a heavy dose of Zeke Elliott here in week 2. He's a definite start for me this week. Saquon Barkley is next on the list. He is a definite must start for me in Dallas this week. I expect a huge workload for him, especially in the second half, as I can see the New York Giants taking a lead to halftime and just trying to run the clock out in the second half. Alvin Kamara is next on the list, and I don't care who he's playing, you start Alvin Kamara. Melvin Gordon next on the list, going to be at Buffalo, and he is another must start this week. Another one of those situations where the Chargers could get a big lead by halftime, lean on Melvin Gordon there in the second half. Could have multiple touchdowns this week, wouldn't surprise me one bit. Leonard Fournette is next on the list, and he's going to be a sit for me this week. Even if he plays, I can see him being limited in some fashion, and TJ Yeldon getting a larger workload up against the New England Patriots this week. I'm not willing to start him as my RB1, knowing that I may lose him at some point throughout the game if I have him at all. Kareem Hunt is next on the list, and Fantasy Ebola lived up to his name there in week 1. But for week 2, we're going to start him. They're going to be playing at Pittsburgh, where they're going to have some sort of a running game in order to have a chance at beating the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's a high-powered offense, and they're going to want to keep the ball out of their hands in the second half. If Kansas City can get a lead in the first half, look for a heavy dose of Kareem Hunt in the second. He could put together top-end, high-end RB2 numbers for you this week. Le'Veon Bell making his appearance on this list, and I don't even know whether to include him or not. But I can tell you one thing, regardless of when he signs, I'm not playing him this week no matter what. Dalvin Cook is going to be next on the list, and they're going to be playing at Green Bay. He is a start this week. We don't know what's going to go on with Aaron Rodgers yet, whether he plays or not, but if he's limited or if he's out, look for a lot heavier dose of a run game in Minnesota and increased workload for Dalvin Cook. I like him this week. Christian McCaffrey is next on the list, and with Greg Olsen going out, that only opens up more passing opportunities for Christian McCaffrey going up against the Atlanta Falcons. He is a definite start for me this week and the foreseeable future. Devontae Freeman is next on the list. They're going to be playing at home against Carolina. I'm going to sit Devontae Freeman this week. Last week, he was out-touched by Tevin Coleman. And until we can figure out what's going on in this Atlanta offense, he's going up against a Carolina team that just held Zeke Elliott in check for the most part. I'm going to sit Devontae Freeman this week until I can figure out what are they thinking. Jordan Howard is next on the list. They're going to be playing at home against Seattle, and I'm starting Jordan Howard. Did anybody see Jordan Howard get 5 receptions in a game? And if that can continue, Jordan Howard is fringe RB1 rest of the season. Joe Mixon is next on the list. They're going to be going up against Baltimore, and I expect a lot of running in this game between Joe Mixon and Alex Collins. It's a tough defensive front that Mixon's going to have to deal with. Don't go out there expecting the same production he got in week 1, but I'm still starting Joe Mixon for the potential upside and the pass catching ability. Alex Collins is next on the list, and this is somebody who burned a lot of you guys last week, myself included, but I have him as a start this week. Kenneth Dixon is injured, and the whole reason that he saw limited work last week is because they were up by 40 at halftime almost, and they rested him. Don't read anything else into it. Don't jump off the bandwagon. I'm still starting Alex Collins. Next on the list is LaShawn McCoy, who I'm going to sit this week against the Los Angeles Chargers. That Buffalo offense looks completely lost. The Chargers defense is not as bad as they played in week 1, and I totally expect Buffalo having to throw the ball in order to have any resemblance of a chance of putting up points against the Chargers. Kenyon Drake is next. They'll be going up against the New York Jets, and what we were worried about Kenyon Drake in the preseason kind of happened. Frank Gore is a thing in Miami. Yes, Drake out-touched him 17 touches to 9 touches, but just the fact that Gore is involved is enough to keep me away from a team that's going to be forced to throw a lot this year in Miami. I'm sitting Kenyon Drake. Lamar Miller is next on my list, going to play at Tennessee against the Titans, and right now I have him as a sit. However, if Marcus Mariota is out of this game and does not play, I change that to a start for Lamar Miller because I can see Houston getting the lead, leaning on the run game, and giving Lamar Miller more opportunities. Next on the list is Rolls-Royce Freeman of the Denver Broncos, going to be playing at home against the Oakland Raiders in somewhat of a favorable matchup. A lot of people were burned by Royce Freeman last week. They expected more. I expected more. One thing nobody expected was Phillip Lindsay to get 15 carries, and I can't see that continuing. They were kind of riding the hot hand in Denver. Some of those carries migrate back towards Royce Freeman here over the coming weeks, and I'm going to start him again, preferably as a flex play. Jay Ajayi is next on the list, and I'm going to start him here for week 2, going up against Tampa Bay in somewhat of a favorable matchup. The Saints had their way with the run game for the most part against Tampa Bay, and Jay Ajayi runs behind the best offensive line of football, will get tons of goal line opportunities, and they're slowly going to be giving him more and more work each week, and he's still producing over 4 yards a carry. I'm starting Jay Ajayi. Derrick Henry is next on the list, and I'm going to sit him here in week 2 going up against the Houston Texans. Now, yes, the Texans have a formidable run defense, but I'm more worried about the split of work in Tennessee. We talked about it all preseason. What type of role does Dion Lewis play with Derrick Henry? We kind of found it out in week 1, and apparently Dion Lewis is a thing in Tennessee and actually got more work than Derrick Henry. Yes, Henry had a long touchdown run called back by a holding call, but that still doesn't say anything to the point that Dion Lewis got more overall touches, and for that reason alone, I'm sitting Derrick Henry until that split can become more of a 50-50. Marshawn Lynch is next on the list, going to be at Denver, going up against the Broncos, and I'm sitting Marshawn Lynch here in week 2. I just don't want any part of that Oakland offense right now until they can figure out what's going on, and I don't expect that to happen against one of the top run defenses in football and the Denver Broncos. Dion Lewis is next on the list, and I'm actually going to start Dion Lewis this week. I sat Derrick Henry, but I'm starting Dion Lewis. Like I said, he's seeing the majority of the work right now. They're playing against the Houston Texans, and if that offense in Houston can figure things out this week, Tennessee will be forced to rely more on the passing game, insert Dion Lewis in more opportunities, especially in PPR leagues. I like Dion Lewis this week, and I'm going to start him. Rex Burkhead is next on the list, and they're going to be heading down to Jacksonville to face the Jaguars, and as of right now, I have Rex Burkhead as a sit for the week. Now, if Sony Michel is ruled out of this game here in week 2, that will change to a start for Rex Burkhead. But I like James White a lot more in this game. Actually, I can see a lot more receptions headed his way, being that they're going to have to throw the ball because they'll struggle in the run game. Carlos Hyde is next on the list, and he's going to be a start here for week 2 going up against the New Orleans Saints. It's clear now he is the clear lead back in Cleveland, and they're going to have to run the ball this week to have a chance. With the addition of Josh Gordon coming back and an extended pitch count, if you want to call it, that's only going to pull the defense outside the box, which already looks like a horrible defense, completely different than last year in New Orleans, giving Carlos Hyde more opportunities to find creases and gaps, plus he's the clear goal line back in Cleveland. I'm starting Carlos Hyde as a flex play this week. Next up is Tevin Coleman here for week 2, and they're going to be going up against Carolina Panthers, and I'm starting Tevin Coleman this week as a flex play. Now, I already sat Devontae Freeman earlier in the show, but Tevin Coleman out-touched Devontae Freeman once again, and I expect the same thing to happen here again in week 2. They're going to have to throw the ball more in Atlanta, more short dump-off passes. Tevin Coleman fits that scheme a little bit better, more of a big-bodied running back. I like Tevin Coleman this week as a flex play. Jamal Williams is next, and he is a hard sit. No way do I start Jamal Williams this week against the Minnesota defense. not just because of Minnesota. It's possible that Aaron Rodgers doesn't play, and if he doesn't, all those defenders stay in the box, giving Jamal Williams nowhere to run or hide. Kerryon Johnson is next on the list of the Detroit Lions. They'll be playing the San Francisco 49ers this week. Now, yes, there was a slight injury to LeGarrette Blount, but I'm sitting Kerryon Johnson. Still too much of a committee going on in Detroit for me to trust him as of yet, and I'm going to keep him on the sit list. Chris Carson's next on the list, going up against the Chicago Bears in Chicago. And at times, Chris Carson looked great this week. He even jumped completely over somebody and picked up extra yardage. However, he got the same amount of carries as Rashad Penny. Yes, he was more efficient with the carries that he got, but Rashad Penny is still going to be worked into this game plan. Going up against a tough Chicago run defense, I'm not feeling it. I'm sitting Chris Carson. Peyton Barber is next on the list, and he's going to be a sit this week going up against one of the top defenses in football of the Philadelphia Eagles. He had almost 20 touches last week, Barber, but he didn't do a whole lot with it. And apparently Ryan Fitzpatrick is like the second coming of Peyton Manning now, and they like to throw the ball a whole lot in Tampa Bay. I'm passing on Peyton Barber. Sony Michel is next on the list, and I don't even know if he's going to play or not for sure yet, but if he does, I'm going to get a lot of questions about him. If he does play, he's only going to get a handful of touches, and they're going to work him in slowly. Going against one of the best run defenses in all of the league in Jacksonville, I'm going to sit Sony Michel even if he plays. Alfred Morris is next on the list, and they're going to be playing against Detroit, so he's a must-start this week. In case you missed it on Monday Night Football, the Jets had a bajillion rushing yards against the Lions. They couldn't stop anybody on the ground. And now Alfred Morris gets his crack at it with close to 20 touches a game in an offense that's improved in San Francisco, especially if they get Marquise Goodwin back. Could open up the field even more for Alfred Morris. I expect 20-plus touches from Morris this week, and I'm starting him. Isaiah Crowell is next on the list, and they'll be going up against the Miami Dolphins this week, and I'm going to start Isaiah Crowell. That offense in New York looked great, partly because the Detroit defense did not. But Sam Darnold looks like a legit NFL quarterback. He's going to pull defenders outside of the box, and Isaiah Crowell is going to have the best opportunity that he's had in his entire career. He didn't get these kinds of chances in Cleveland. Now he's going to get them in New York. Like the upside of Isaiah Crowell, and I'm starting him this week. Chris Thompson's next on the list. They'll be going up against the Indianapolis Colts, which is a great matchup for him. Chris Thompson's role is not going to go away. It's the same role as he had last year, same role to continue this week. Love the upside of Chris Thompson, especially in PPR leagues, and he is a must-start for me, especially as a flex play in PPR leagues. Rashad Penny is next on the list, and I'm going to sit him also in Chicago against the Bears, similar to Chris Carson. That defensive front for the Chicago Bears is nothing to mess with. There's too much of a timeshare here in Seattle, and they're going to have to throw the ball to put up some points. I don't like the chances of Rashad Penny this week. I'm sitting him. Matt Breida is next on the list for the San Francisco 49ers, going up against those Detroit Lions we talked about a little bit earlier, and I'm going to start Matt Breida if I need to as a flex this week. Similar to Bilal Powell this past Monday, Breida plays that same type of role, and if Marquise Goodwin does not play for the San Francisco 49ers, I look for Breida to have increased touches, which is an increased opportunity at production. I'm starting Matt Breida. Marlon Mack is next on the list, and there's rumors that he may play this week, but even if he does, he's a hard sit for me. There's too many running backs in an offense that's going to rely too much on the pass. I'm sitting Marlon Mack. Apparently, we've hopped into a time machine, and Adrian Peterson is 10 years younger. He had the second most carries of all running backs this past week, and I expect more of the same this week going up against the Indianapolis Colts. Lots of groundwork, could have a second half lead, and he's also going to get all the goal line work. Adrian Peterson seems to have been a steal in this year's draft. Duke Johnson is next going up against the New Orleans Saints, and I'm going to sit Duke Johnson. I hate to do it. I like Duke Johnson's upside, but the removal of the pitch count of Josh Gordon only takes away possible targets. Plus, the new offense in Cleveland doesn't seem to be using him as much as they did last year. I'm going to sit Duke Johnson for right now. Tariq Cohen is next on the list, and I have him kind of a start/sit depending on what type of league you play in. If you're in a PPR league and you're looking for a flex play, I like the upside of Tariq Cohen this week, going up against Seattle, who just gave up a big day to a similar back in Denver with Phillip Lindsay. And Tariq Cohen seems to be a pretty big part of this offense in Chicago. I'm not sold on Mitch Trubisky going deep down the field yet. I like the chances for Tariq Cohen as a flex in PPR leagues only this week. Bilal Powell is next on the list, and I'm going to sit Bilal Powell here in Week 2. Even though he had a decent Week 1 against the Detroit Lions, it's not something that I'm going to expect from him week in and week out. Sam Darnold looks legit. He looks like he's able to move the ball down the field. In this game against the Miami Dolphins, I can see a lot more of Isaiah Crowell on the ground than I can see Bilal Powell through the air. I'm going to sit Bilal Powell for Week 2. Next up, James Conner. James Conner is a must-start as long as Le'Veon Bell doesn't play, which I doubt he does. Going up against the Kansas City Chiefs, who just gave up a big day to Melvin Gordon. I love James Conner. He's a must start this week. CJ Anderson is next on the list, and I don't even know why I have him on a list. If you have CJ Anderson, sit him. Sit him on your bench, and don't use him unless something happens to McCaffrey. James White is next on the list, and I'm starting James White as a flex this week in PPR leagues going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. The loss of Jeremy Hill, Sony Michel still may not play. I can see a lot more work for James White in the passing game this week, and he's proven to be valuable in that role here recently. He had a great week 1 in PPR leagues, and I'm starting him this week again in PPR flex spots. All right, so those were a lot of running backs there, a little bit more than the 6 that I normally go through. Let me know if you guys like this format or not. If you like the old 3 and 3, hit me up down below. Let me know, and I can always switch it back. Just trying to evolve a little bit and see what it is you guys like the most. Really appreciate the support. Make sure you guys are liking, commenting, subscribing. Looking forward to another week of fantasy football, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks.